So,
And even though we always loved each other, there were times we didn't like each other.
yeah.
But you come to that decision, and we mentioned the D word one time, the divorce word one time, and we just said, we're not going there.
Right. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to this episode of Creating the Future. We've been having so much fun this month as we've been interviewing different married couples and even some talking about pre-marriage and really learning from life experience for those who have kind of been through the fires, been through the floods, and come out on the other side. And I love it when you can come out on the other side still in love. Yes. And that is the case right here as we wrap up this whole series with Jim and Kris Beard, who have been married for 53 years. 53 years. And what I celebrate most of you guys in your marriage is that since I've known you guys, both of you, but especially with Jim, I've spent a little bit more time with you, you are always incredibly honoring of Kris. And I'm not sure that you've ever gotten over the fact that she said yes to marry you. 53 years later, you're still surprised that she's still sticking around with you. I get that feeling. And there's something beautiful about that. So we want to interview you guys today and maybe get some information, maybe get some revelation, maybe just get some pointers amidst maybe just getting some inspiration that when marriage gets tough that you can survive. And so I know you guys have gone through some tough years and some good years. So let's just start right here at the beginning. What's been the key to your marriage lasting for 53 years?
Well, to start with, we shared our faith, the same faith. We dated in middle school, high school.
Are you serious? So this has been a lot longer than 53 years here. Okay.
Oh, yes. But the dating in middle school was my mother following us in the car home from church. Yeah. So, I mean, it was supervised.
In my 1948 Ford Club Coupe Deluxe.
And a lot of group dating with the youth group. So we had a great teens together in high school. And then God called both of us. We went to college together, got married. And so I would say, first of all, is having God in our lives, sharing our faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd say learning how to enjoy being with each other. And you have to, I guess we've counseled a lot of couples over the years, and several we've had to just look right at them and say, look, this isn't all about you, making your life about each other, living to maybe surprise each other, enjoy each other, laugh together, and learning to laugh together and enjoy life together. If you've got that balance in your life, when the hard times come, they won't be as devastating.
Yeah.
And they will come.
That's so good. Yeah. That's so good. So you guys have gone through a lot in 53 years. I'm sure there's been trials, there's been moments of celebration and mountaintops as well as the valleys. For people who don't know, you guys pastored for a long time and served as a denominational leader within Open Bible, right? Open Bible denomination. And you also went through the rigors of not only just career-wise, but educationally-wise, because Kris, you have a master's degree, Jim, you have a doctorate. That alone causes extra tension on a family when you're going through stuff like that. So what are some of the hardest seasons that you guys have gone through, and how did you overcome them? How did you make it through those seasons?
Well, there are definitely seasons, for sure. In the first 15 years were very, very hard. We were, even as much as we had similar backgrounds, we still, we're doing this a lot. And when you're in ministry, that's added pressure.
Right.
We had 3 little boys. We're planting a church, building our home, and really for every marriage, we were talking on the way over here, those are stressful times when your kids are little, and finances, as pastors, it was always a struggle. I always felt like, when is there going to ever be money for me? Just me.
Right.
Not clothes for the kids or whatever. And that was very stressful. So there are the seasons, and that was a difficult one. But I felt our secret there was, the pressure of being pastors is, you can't really divorce and keep going.
It's not as easy as it
No.
least.
And so, I mean, we hit the wall there, but we got counseling, and
Yeah.
that was a big deal back then. And we weathered it, and we had to. What I loved and hated about counseling is I couldn't keep pointing my finger at him.
Yeah.
I had to look at what I had to change.
Right.
So the counseling is what got us through that first difficult part.
And it was always around finances, and
Mostly.
planting a church and being bivocational and hardly ever being home because you had to work to keep bread on the table and everything else. The church couldn't pay you yet, and when you're going through the financial difficulties, that has a way of putting a filter on your perspective of each other, and you tend to accuse each other of being self-serving or something. Just I don't know. It was never, we got counseling like Kris said, but it was never about not loving each other. It was about trying to navigate the minefield of ministry with 3 little kids and living up to the expectations that everybody had of us without failing. And we can both say we've never failed morally or ethically or financially or legally or any other way. But we had some speed bumps along the way that jarred us to our bones. So.
And even though we always loved each other, there were times we didn't like each other.
Yeah.
But you come to that decision, and we mentioned the D word one time, the divorce word one time, and we just said we're not going there.
Right.
Not only because we're pastors, but marriage is hard, but the alternative is hard.
For me, we thought about. I still remember where we were. We were overlooking this beautiful valley from our car, and we had to drive up there because we needed to be alone. And of course, we didn't have cell phones or anything, and so nobody could call us. They didn't know where we were. There was no GPS tracking to find out where the pastor is. And so we were sitting up there in the car talking, and I said, does this mean that we're going to get divorced? And then we looked at each other like that, and that's when she says, we're not going there. We're just not going there.
Yeah.
And for me, that was never an option, because when I think of somebody else raising my sons, that was absolutely not an option. And for us to be able to work through and manage life's difficult stages had to be a demonstration to our children that God can do anything, that God is with us, that God will provide for us. And if it didn't work in real life, it wouldn't be able to transfer to the next generation. And so I thank God that we were able to navigate those times while we were young successfully, and our sons later referred back to those times as positive for them, because they saw us fighting for each other and holding on to what we really believed in. And so those are speed bumps, and usually for us it was about finances, and it wasn't till we retired that we were able to live the way that we had prepared to live for all those years. And so
one of the other things in counseling that was pivotal for us was learning to have fun together. Because I was the very serious one. I came from a very serious family. He came from, he had a great sense of humor, but after we got married, it drove me nuts. It's like, can't you ever be serious? And so I had to learn to have fun. Also, as pastors, we had to learn to have fun. So one of the assignments from our counselor was, because he always planned the dates, go to dinner, go to a movie, So then it was my turn. So, then it's on me. I got to figure this out. It's not as easy as they said. So we grew up not dancing in the church, but I loved, we'd sit and go to weddings in Colorado for our church people, and they'd be dancing, and I would just sit there and fume. So for our 20th anniversary, for Christmas, I gave him, we're going to take dancing lessons, ballroom dancing lessons. And I could I could feel it.
All the Pentecostals.
Yeah,
You know, that's a sin. You're going to hell for that
sin,
one.
yeah.
Don't let Jesus come back while you're dancing.
Right.
He says, but what'll the church think? And she says, how much worse could it get?
So we did that, and so then for our 20th high school anniversary, a reunion, we went. And I'm telling you, we cut the rug.
Mm-hmm.
And people just couldn't believe how much energy we had, but it was just fun, and I needed to have fun.
That's so
And
good.
so basically since then we've just learned to have fun together and enjoy each other.
That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
I think the ministry side of this is an interesting part that I think reflects on anybody who's watching this. It may not be the obvious reflection, but I just want to point it out. If you're a good minister, there's going to be a level of authenticity, which means it's going to be very hard to minister when you're in a fight with your wife or things are not going home.
Man.
It's just, I've had many times with Ada and I where we're in the car and I'm like, I've got to fix this before I get out of the car and speak at this place. I remember one time driving somewhere in South Florida. I was speaking somewhere years ago, and I remember being so frustrated with her. And I'm looking at the clock going, I got an hour, and I've got to resolve this in myself and with each other and in her, because I got to walk on the stage, and I'm going to be horrible. I won't be able to focus, and, you know.
Exactly.
Ministry does that, and everybody might kind of laugh about it, but here's the thing. Jesus said if you come to worship and you have an issue with your brother, or I think you could easily put your spouse in that, that you stop worshiping and you go deal with it, and then you come back to worship. And realistically, maybe it's not a perfect rule and it's not realistic sometimes, but marital fights for Christians shouldn't last past a Sunday because we should be having to deal with it before we can really worship. Yeah. And that's just an admonition, but also an encouragement for everybody who's watching, who maybe you're not in full-time ministry, but maybe you are and you don't know it because it's just not vocational ministry. All right, so what is the time for you guys, that you wanted to quit and it got really hard? Or you kind of already answered that, but if somebody watching, say it that way, is wanting to quit and they're really struggling in their marriage and they don't know if they can make it, what kind of advice would you give to them?
In marriage or ministry?
In marriage, yeah.
In marriage. You keep going. You've got to keep going. And God puts those times in your life as a believer to get past it. And to learn about Him, about His grace and His mercy and His strength. Because if you believe God put you together, and then there's the children. The other great thing that we had is our parents, we stayed together all those years, and we watched them go through difficult times. So it wasn't even like divorce.
Right.
We don't even talk about that. And so we had that, but I don't know, you just keep going.
Well, there really isn't much of an alternative, because when you think, life is hard, then you die. Marriage is hard, and if you decide to call it breaks, then you die with regrets.
Yeah.
Because you didn't resolve areas of your life. You didn't allow God to be God. The God that you always preached to others that could fix anything if you'd give it to Him.
Wow.
He couldn't fix you,
Wow.
Yeah. And so it had to work for us before we could, like you said, be authentic, be real, be honest. And I think people know when a pastor is having struggles in his marriage.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious.
Right. It's hard to hide it.
Yeah.
People
And
can feel the tension when you walk in a room.
Yeah. But like you said, going up to preach or minister and you haven't resolved things, I think if you cross that line where you can do that without conscience, well, that's where we see people
dangerous.
falling.
Yeah.
It applies to everybody else, but not me. And if you're authentic, you can't go there. So.
Yeah. We did a divorce and remarriage podcast with Dr. Robbie Waddell a while back that you guys might be familiar with who's watching. I'm reminded, I think I said it in that one, but some of the tensions we have with divorce in America today is it's just so easy. It's just the instant run away from it.
Yeah.
And there's one generation that said if something is broke, we fix it. And then there's another generation that I'm honestly a part of that says if it's broke, we replace it. And I think when it comes to marriage, it cannot be we replace it just because I don't like you anymore, I don't like what's going on, or I'm frustrated or whatever. It's got to be, the first attempt has to be to fix it. And there are moments you can't fix it, and there's things that happen in life, but I think our goal should be to fix it, not replace it just because, it breaks down or has issues, Yeah. And there's some beauty in that. What would you say to yourselves if you could go back after 53 years of marriage, go back to year 1 and talk to yourselves? What would you say? And then I'll ask the same question of year 25. If you're halfway there or so, We just interviewed Pastor Ken and Madonna around that stage, right? Year 25, year 1, what would you go back and say to yourselves at those points?
I think I would start by sitting down and having a cup of coffee and looking across the table in a dated diner and looking at my younger self and saying, you're not going to make it if you worry about what people think about you. If you worry about pleasing people rather than God, you're not going to make it. If you want to make it, be comfortable in your own skin. God gave you gifts.
Wow.
God gave them to you for a reason. They're like nobody else's gifts. And their gifts aren't like your gifts. And so get comfortable with your own skin and realize that God called you. God put this in you. Now you have to be a steward of that calling.
Wow.
And you have to allow yourself to grow in the way that God wants you to grow, not what people expect you to do. You'll go crazy and you'll want to quit if you don't get comfortable in your own skin and your own calling, realizing that it's more important to please God than man. What's the worst can happen? You lose your integrity by trying to please a congregation. And you'll never get that part of your life back. So
Yeah. Kris, do you want to add anything?
Well, I don't think I'd probably listen to anybody.
So much honesty in that right there.
I mean,
would you even listen to your older self?
I know. I was so insecure, and I'm so grateful to Jim because he's always had confidence in me. I did not have any confidence in myself. I wanted to be behind the scenes, don't put me out front, and God just throws me out front. And it's been the best thing for me. But even like getting my master's degree, it was like, I don't know that I can do this. And he just helped me through it, and it just gave me such confidence that my only regret in life is that I was so insecure and lacked confidence. And I wasted so much energy worrying about what people thought, worrying about money. I just wasted all that. But yet, that's how we all learn.
one of the big joys along the way for me was to see her step into God's plan for her life and realize it. And she became the National Director of Women's Ministries in Open Bible. And that's at the same time she was working on her master's degree. And she was doing them both. And she was doing a stellar job. And she was having so much fun. She completely rewrote the script in women's ministries. It was from a frumpy-dumpy bunch of old ladies to younger women saying, hey, she's really making that look great. I want to be a part of that. So
we had fun. Lots of fun.
Anything like year 1, year 5, anything else, like especially with marriage, that you would say?
Get counseling.
Start it.
Just do it.
Jim, you do a lot of our pre-marriage counseling here at Arise, so
yeah. Another thing I got into, though, after I got my master's degree, I went and got training with John Maxwell for coaching. And I just totally love coaching. You're moving people forward. Right. Counseling has its place, dealing with the past, but coaching, you're moving people forward. And it moved myself forward. And I love that.
Yeah. So good. So good. Sometimes people ask that question of me, and I'll say this for the podcast listeners. I think if I could go back and talk to my younger self, and this is good advice, I think, for everybody watching, it is feed the old man inside of you. So there's an old person that's inside of you that hasn't developed yet, and you have to feed him now so that he develops well later. I frequently get caught up so much in now, and I got to do this now, and I got to get this thing now. And not focusing on, all right, well, 20 years from now, who am I going to be? 25 years, 30 years, 40 years. Because there is an old person inside of all of us, so to speak, that is developing and coming out that you need to feed while you're young, or you're not going to be fulfilled when you're older, whether it is the education or the spiritual side of things or the leadership, whatever it is. You just have to feed that old person now so that they can thrive later, and don't just focus so much on the present. Yeah.
That's good.
All right, last question for you. How has your marriage influenced your children, your grandchildren, and you mentioned pastoral ministry, just those that are around you? I can say from my vantage point, it's a beautiful testament to have you guys here after 53 years. I'm not even that old, 53 years of marriage in a world where that unfortunately is not common any longer. Just what's been the influence? How are your kids better? How are your grandkids better? How are those around you better?
Well, we've celebrated, 2 of our sons have been married over 25 years.
Yeah.
I mean, when that hits you, it's like,
Right.
whoa.
Yeah.
Because they watched us go through all of these things. The third one will be, he's on his well on his way also. 7 grandchildren, and they're great. Our sons are great dads, fathers. They married wonderful women. We just could not be happier in that, because that's our legacy. To me, being a mom was so important, and planting in my kids was so important. To me, that's the reward. Money or not, that is the reward.
I feel that God has allowed us to raise 3 champion sons, not only champion in athletics, which they were in high school and college, but champions as fathers, as husbands, as providers. My youngest son was talking to some group, and he was asked the question, what advice can you take from your father about dealing with your wife? And he says, well, my father said 2 words, the way I should treat my wife. He said 2 words. He says, beat her. And he said, and I paused for effect, and he says, beat her to the door and open it up for her. Beat her to the car door, open it up for her. Beat her to the trash and take it out, And because he saw, and when our boys were young, and the 2 oldest one, the youngest one is smart enough to see the example of the older ones, but the 2 older ones asked my wife one day, and I literally grabbed them by their lapels, and I pinned them against the wall, and I looked at them. I think they were off the floor as well, and I said, you will not talk to my wife that way.
Right.
I didn't say your mom. I said, you will not talk to my wife that way. And to this day, those boys think back at the time where Dad really fought for Mom, and he showed us how to fight for our wives. He showed us how to protect them. And so, and our grandkids, they think we're a lot of fun. When we get together, we play pickleball and stuff like that, and ride their scooters with them and stuff. I mean, that's stuff people in their 70s don't do, but we do because we're healthy. Yeah. And we have a lot of fun. So I would say God's given us a legacy that we're watching grow up before our very eyes, and we're so grateful. So grateful.
Something else, as adults with our sons, when we were together, we would apologize. I'm so sorry we couldn't give you this or that. And one day they just stopped us short and said, stop it. Several times they did it, if we would do it again. You raised us the best you can. You gave us what you could.
Work ethic.
I have the good job that I have today because of the work ethic you taught us. So just stop it. I thought, whoa, good for them.
Right.
Instead of letting us grovel about that, they just said, stop it. We're happy.
That's so good.
So in a sense, our sons have helped us to live in the present in a reality that they perceive. And it's everything that we had ever hoped for and wished for.
Yeah. So beautiful. That's so good. I love, and I'm so thankful for your legacy and the way it's influencing all of us. Sometimes you just need to see that somebody else has survived the valleys and survived the hard times to know that you can too. And I think that's a beautiful thing. In the movie Gladiator, the main character, whatever his name is there, I forget, but that character actually says a quote that's actually true to Marcus Aurelius, not the character in the movie, but the actual Marcus Aurelius. And he says, what we do in life echoes in eternity. And, I think that's a very powerful quote, but I think what you do in life echoes through generations. And what you guys did is echoing through your kids, that's now echoing through grandkids and beyond. And I would encourage everybody who's watching this podcast to think with that mentality that what you are doing in your life, in your marriage, is not just about you. The fact that you survive these hard times and you refuse to quit, and you might be dogmatic and that bulldog grip that just says, I refuse to let go. You have no idea how that's actually echoing in your children and your grandchildren and beyond. So just encourage you with that. Stay married, stay fighting for your marriage. And thank you, Jim and Kris, for being an example of that. After 53 years, surviving ministry, doctorates, masters, and marriage, all that together in your marriage is just a beautiful, beautiful testimony. So thank you guys for being with us.
Thank you.
For everybody watching, make sure you comment. I'd love to hear, how long have you been married? What advice would you give? What advice would you want to share with others to say, hey, this helped me in my marriage? Maybe you have something else to share. I hope you've enjoyed not only this series, or I'm sorry, not only this podcast, but the entire series as we've been talking about marriage this month. I hope it's been a blessing to you. And make sure you like and subscribe below. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. God bless you.